What you see on your left is my favorite cartoon ever, one of Gary Larson's Far Sides, which appeared in the 80s and early 90s. This cartoon has what looks like a hut with some people on a probably South Seas or African area. And it has some people coming up in a boat that look like white people there to do something research oriented, and the natives are scurrying around hiding their TV and their VCR and their lamp, saying, "Anthropologist, anthropologist, the anthropologists are coming." I like this cartoon because it's funny, but I like this cartoon because it says something about the way that we communicate across cultures. The anthropologists, the American or British anthropologists coming to this place, have a preconceived notion of what the culture is going to be like. The natives understand this and understand that it's in their interest to meet those expectations. What will happen then is not so much communication as theater. An exaggeration, yes. A crucial lesson about how we communicate across cultures, which is something that everybody who goes into any kind of business in the world today needs to learn how to do. It's that too. Okay, a few basics. We have always had diversity in the world. Cultures have always had to deal with people in their own cultures of varying abilities and inclinations and designations, and people from other cultures coming in. I remember when I teach my class in satire, one of my favorite things to teach is Juvenal's third satire, which is about an old man leaving Rome, moving out to the countryside, and he tells people why he's leaving. He's leaving because he just can't deal with all the Jews and the Greeks that have infiltrated Rome. And I like to use this with students to show that the kinds of struggles that we experience in America and in the world today, incorporating different kinds of diversity, have been here always. We've always had to deal with people who aren't like us. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that people aren't like us. That's what produces growth in the world. I've never learned anything from somebody who saw the world exactly like I did, because I have nothing to learn. And nobody who sees the world like I do has ever learned anything from me. It's the diversity that produces education. There's no one-size-fits-all concept of diversity. A computer program couldn't do it. It might be able to win at Jeopardy. It probably couldn't relate with a diverse workforce. Because people are individuals first and foremost, before they're members of a culture or members of a race or a gender. People are individuals, and individuals have to be treated as individuals. And it is our responsibility as moral adults to understand people and how they perceive the world, and what the best way to work with them is. Their cultural and economic and social backgrounds are going to have some role in how people interact with others. It's not going to be the only thing that has a role, however. So as we talk about diversity, here are a few guidelines, things to remember, things to kind of store away in your memory files, but these are not hard and fast rules. The hard and fast rule is know people, ask people, and understand them as you would want to be understood. Stakes are high, and they're getting higher every day. We need in business to be open to diversity and cultural sensitivities, not just because it's the moral thing to do, which it is. It is the moral and ethical and Christ-like thing to do, to understand people how they are and where they are. But it's also just good business practice. We live in a diverse society. Here in Kansas, as you know, we have a center out in Dodge City. Some of you may be affiliated with our Dodge City Center. Dodge City is more than 50% Spanish-speaking now. We have a variety of cultures and subcultures within the United States, and the people who belong to these cultures have money and spend money, and being able to appeal to them is good business sense. But we also live in a global economy. Increasingly, we live in a world that produces goods and services across the world and coordinates them at the corporate level. That means that if you're working with an American company, you may very well have a call center in India, or a manufacturing plant in Vietnam, or a factory somewhere in Mexico. and you will have to deal on a daily basis with email, telephone conversations, and also with travel to and from. You'll have to deal with people from a variety of different cultures, and this isn't going away. Forrester Research predicts that 3.3 million white-collar jobs are going to leave the United States in the next 15 years and are going to be dispersed throughout the world. And that, in many ways, is a good thing. That allows for a high degree of innovation, a high degree of interaction, and it helps to open those markets to the products that we produce here. But it means that dealing with a variety of different cultures on their home field is no longer optional for people who want to succeed in business. There is more that unites us than that divides us. I firmly believe that. If you look across the world, look at the literature of the world and the history of world cultures, people are fundamentally the same in the way that they love their families, in the way that they thirst after freedom and justice, and the way that they relate to the world through poetry and through even through scientific investigation. There are many, many similarities that bring people together. But there are cultural differences. And being aware of those cultural differences is the first step to being able to communicate across them. First, and probably most obviously, different cultures have different religious values and beliefs and perceptions. Even cultures where many people aren't formally religious, the historical religions of Europe or of India or of China have created a lot of sensibilities in the way that people structure their understanding of the world. Being aware that one of our largest trading partners and the largest democracy in the world, India, is a Hindu country. That China, another one of our major trading partners and competitors in the future, China comes from a trifold religious tradition of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. And understanding those three sets of perceptions and values is very important to understanding how to communicate with people who come from that culture. It's also true that different cultures have a different style of nonverbal communication, body language, and eye contact. In some cultures, it's considered disrespectful to look somebody straight in the eyes. In some cultures, it's considered disrespectful not to. Some gestures, hand gestures, facial gestures, have different meanings in different cultures. And this is one that I didn't realize until I was pretty old. Different cultures have a different sense of conversational space. What's too close in one culture may be considered distant in another culture. In some cultures, Latin American cultures is one example of this, one that I've had a lot of experience with. People like to be close together, and there's quite a bit of hugging and touching, and in some cultures, this is considered very rude and aggressive. You've got to be aware of this, and we don't have time here to talk about every culture's view of all of these things, but be aware that people could be offended by things that you do or say without your intending it because of all of these differences in cultural values and perceptions. We'll close this hopefully very short podcast by summarizing the suggestions of Brenda Arbeles. And I'm not quite sure who Brenda Arbeles is, but she sounds very bright, and I think she's right on with these suggestions that are given in your book. First of all, always be aware just of the fact that values and behaviors are influenced by a culture. That in different ways, people are products of their culture, and many of the ways that they interact with other people are dictated by some aspect of that culture. Be flexible with other people, and with this I would also say, don't be too quick to take offense when people misinterpret you, or when you see somebody do something that you think is rude. Get a thick skin. Realize that people are probably going to be different than you. When you're dealing with people across cultures, do not be quick to be intimidated, and do not be quick to be offended. be flexible with people, and hopefully then they will be flexible with you as well. Be sensitive to what people think and feel, and be sensitive to the ways that differences can manifest themselves in things like eye contact and how much pressure people have when they shake your hands, or whether or not they tend to interrupt and ask you a lot of questions, which is considered appropriate in some cultures, or whether they tend to sit with their arms folded and listen and not interact with you at all, which is also considered appropriate in some cultures. Be aware of other people's values and beliefs and practices, even if this means looking stuff up on the internet. This is why God invented Wikipedia. Not so you can use it for your class papers, where it's not a particularly good source, but so that you can get a rough guide to how different people see the world, and how different values and belief systems emerge, and how they continue to influence people. And finally, be sensitive, and this is really, really, really important, be sensitive to differences among individuals. Be sensitive to the fact that not everybody in culture X or gender Y or generation Z thinks the same. That there are just as many differences within a culture as there are across cultures, and never reduce people to what you know about their culture, because you can't be reduced to what people know about Americans. And if somebody in China or India or Japan is studying what the typical American is like, they're probably not going to get to you. And you're doing the same is probably not going to get to the actual person and people that you're interacting with.